Hello and welcome everyone to the business Q&A sessions with Meeta and Tosh. Hi, Tosh.
Hi, Meeta. It feels like it's been ages.
It has.
Is it 2 weeks or 3 weeks now? I can't even remember. It's pretty much most of April anyway.
It's been Easter hiatus, and I think it's been a couple of weeks, but it definitely feels like longer. I mean, we've been running these Q&A sessions for the year now, and it's almost been like our constant, hasn't it, in this time of difficulty and time of uncertainty.
Yeah, you know, it felt that we're not doing it actually for the last few weeks because we've been doing it so consistently every single week. And, you know, always looking to put some value out there, something that's practical, something that's current. But look, I feel refreshed. I'm ready to kickstart. I think it's a good topic. I think it's really relevant to a lot of businesses. Certainly, my clients have been calling me about this sort of topic. So I'll be going through that with people as well. So they have some sort of real live examples of what people are doing about the situation.
Yeah, I think there's definitely this feeling of we all kind of know what we want to do, but everyone's interested in knowing how other organisations do it. So that's hopefully what we can bring to everyone over the next 30 to 40 minutes. So for those of you who are new to the Q&A sessions, I'll do a little bit of the housekeeping. And for those of you who are returners, welcome back. Thank you for your continued involvement, your commitment and your input. So as always, Tosh and I like to get a measure of the room, and we have a poll that we run, and we will display those results at the end of our session. The poll today is asking you what your biggest people challenges are right now. So the options are really from conversations that Tosh and I are having out with our client network. And somebody's already put an other in there. So the options are grievances and disciplinaries. Tosh and I were speaking that, Tosh, you're actually getting a lot of calls from employees because half of your business supports businesses, half of your business supports employees, right? And you're getting...
That's right. Well, you know, with Furlough School still being active until the end of September, that's kind of put a little finger on that problem for the time being. But employees are coming out of the woodwork. So certainly grievances, unhappy with the way they're being treated, or promises they believe being made by the employer being broken, that sort of stuff. That's coming up quite a lot now.
Okay, so that's one of our options. The next one is hiring and talent pooling. That's been something we've been dealing a lot with. Our clients have been pretty quiet over the last year in terms of hiring, but all of a sudden projects need to get finished. People are changing their minds about their jobs. So people are leaving organizations. They are walking because their businesses haven't treated them well. So employers are having to replace, and actually businesses are evolving into new directions from reflecting over the last year. So hiring and talent pooling has been an issue. Interesting that motivation and engagement has already had a few ticks. What's your take on that, Tosh?
I probably add the word communication as well in that one, Meeta, right? Because, that's a big thing, isn't it? People being isolated, people, now the topic, guess what our topic is today, which you're going to go through in a minute anyway, is about people not wanting to come back. Well, why? I'm comfy at home. I don't want to come back into work. They don't necessarily understand what your motivation as an employer to come in. Everything's working fine, isn't it? So I think motivation, engagement, communication, I think that's got to be one of our hot topics probably for next week, or if not the week after.
Yeah, definitely. And training and upskilling also, and not necessarily how somebody does their job in terms of the ability in the role, but actually soft skills, communication, how to conduct yourself. Again, something we're going to cover today is how do people conduct themselves when they're half in and half out. In a way, having everyone in the office or having everyone at home has been, I know it was a tough transition, but it's almost easier than having half in and half out. So there's a whole new set of ways to communicate, ways to show engagement and proactivity and how to deliver success. So that's another one of our options. And the last option is other, which is what else is going on for you, and let us know. So we've asked you to put it in the chat box, and people have ticked other. So if you could, that takes me on to the next bit of an overview of the webinar, is that we have a chat box, and the chat box is designed to make this session useful so that you can get your questions answered and go away and apply those straight away in your organization.
Yeah, this is not some sort of lecture. This is interactive. We really like to make it bespoke, tailored to what you need, problems you're actually facing. So if you clicked other, not if you like, please put it in there. What is that other? Because we'll make that a topic. We'll address it directly. Better still, if you've got other problems, even if it's not related to what we're talking about today, put it in the chat. We will, our promise every single week has been to answer every single question you put in the chat by the end of this session, which is going to be about 30, 40 minutes, so we'll finish about 22 at the latest. And if we miss it somehow, because we run out of time, Meeta and I do a follow-up video, making sure that every single question is answered. And if you want to talk to us, just take it offline. Our contact details will be with the email that you got details of this webinar in the first place. So call us, pick up the phone. You know, we will definitely pick up. It will be us you'll speak to, won't be our team, and we will answer whatever the issue is or help you with whatever problem you're facing right now.
Yeah, very much so. And also we send you a recording at the end of this. Today we're actually adding, remind me what we're adding. We're adding a checklist of government guidelines, is that right?
Yeah, effectively, we're talking about, it's a reminder really, but the government's provided 14 guidelines for different types of industries about what they need to see for a business to be COVID secure. So when we're going to go through, you know, the challenges that employees are facing, well, one of the first things you as an employer has to do is say, well, look, we put these COVID secure measures in place. So the guidelines are there. So that will go out with the recording of this for everybody, if you don't know it already. I imagine most people would, but it's a reminder, it's a refresher.
Brilliant. Thank you, Tosh. So we've done the housekeeping, we've done the intros. Let's get on with the topic. So today is all around with hybrid working becoming the norm for most businesses. And I say most because we know that there are some very high profile businesses like Goldman's who have said, no, everyone back in. But for those who are considering hybrid, which is the majority, how do you get your employees back to work in a safe and engaged way? So there's three areas that Tosh and I are going to cover today. The first one is, how do you get your employees back to work if they don't want to, for whatever reason? And the reasons, again, are conversations that we've already been having. So, Tosh, what are those reasons that you see as being possibly problems?
You know, one of them is maternity leave. That was always there, you know, or not necessarily not returning, but coming back in a flexible working way. Sickness, absence, they're coming back to work, or they feel not safe coming back to work. Maybe that's unreasonable. The most common one at the moment, there's two types of situations, Meeta, that my clients are facing. Number one is, for example, I've got one client that wants his sales team who've been working from home 5 days a week. Now he wants them to come in 3 days a week, because you know what the hub of having your team in one place does. Yeah. You know, sharing ideas of each other, overhearing conversations with clients, talking to each other. You just pick up things that you just can't pick up remotely. So 3 days a week, but they're resisting that. I'll deal with that in a minute. Another one was somebody who left the country. The employees working remotely, they left the country because they didn't feel safe in the UK. They actually went to my motherland, Sri Lanka. Right. She's a lecturer, still is, and they're asking her to come back, but then they're not opening the universities to do the lecturing yet. So they're just trying to enforce the contract, or your place of work is here, you have to be in the UK. Right. Not really. So remember, the default position is if you should continue to work from home where you can. That's the government guidance. Businesses don't look at it's not about where you can. You can drive a car with your feet if you want to. You know, not about can. It's what can we do to really make a difference now. Everybody's stepping up their game. Everybody's trying to progress their company, grow their company. It's not where we were before, where we were just stuck indoors. So I think employers need to be a bit more empowered now about what they can do, and not just about enforcing the law. I know I'm more stick than carrot. And you're going to challenge me in a moment. It's not about forcing it, but getting the buy-in. Get them to understand why this is necessary. And then if they still say no, then you might need to think about the stick approach.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. My take is very much that, first of all, let's acknowledge there is a hell of a lot of mental health challenges and anxiety for people coming back to the office. There are some people that haven't been back to work in a year. You know, all of a sudden, thoughts, worries that they've never had will start to arise. And sometimes people don't remember what it feels like to be back in the office and how good that is for them. So it's important, I think, for employers to, number one, as you said, declare the why. Try a hybrid. Say to employees, we're going to try this for the next month or 3 months or however long a period of time is that they feel is sensible, because people need time to come on board with this transition back in. Number two, with us being the Talent 360 consultancy, we're all about not just recruiting great talent, but then retaining it. Why would you as an employer right now want to enforce something that could mean that great talent is walking out of your door? So treat each person individually, have an overall approach but try not to become black and white about it. So I think you and I are saying the same thing there. And then, good.
Sorry, carry on, Meeta. No, carry on.
I was just going to say, and finally, which then leads me to coming back to where you are, which is that if you've done a reasonable approach, where you've listened, where you've negotiated, where you've discussed, if it's not working, then absolutely you've got to say that, you know what, we're not right for each other anymore. But one thing I just wanted to put in there was that I was reading a quote online that said, from now on, the office is for collaboration, not administration. And actually, if you as an employer can identify with your people that, you know, we are still a community, however we define our community, it has evolved. But as a community, we still need face-to-face touch points. And this is what we as an employer see as what good looks like. We will try this. We will take the temperature of the room. We'll run surveys. We'll run groups, whatever we need to do over the next 3 to 6 months. And we'll make sure we get it right. It's not always going to be right for everyone, but ultimately it's going to be right for the business, and it's going to be the right way forward for a successful working world, right, Tosh?
Yeah, you know the word I'm going to use. I haven't used it for a while now.
Reasonable. I've missed that.
I know. Lawyers dream that word, right? We'll sit there arguing all day what reasonable is, but it is. It really is just that. Reasonable, justifying it. What is reasonable for an employer? Explain. If you think about it, why would an employee say no? So you've got to put them in a position where the employee is being unreasonable by saying no. What is that? Number one, explain the measures you've got in place to keep them safe.
Yeah.
Really obvious, which is what our guidance is going out with this. Number two, don't talk about a general assessment, do an individual risk assessment for their return to work. Doesn't have to be because they're pregnant. It might not be. The risk assessment might be you as a boss just saying, right, I think looks fine, there's a sufficient distance, 1 meter, 2 meters, whatever it may be. They're working side by side, not face to face. Maybe you're having people coming in staggered, whatever the assessment is to minimize the risk of transmission. And the last thing is look at any adjustments you need to make anyway to reduce the risk of transmission. There's a long list of things. You know what they are. They're all in the guidance, and we've been talking about it for ages. Wash your hands regularly. Have sanitation stations. Wear your mask if it's appropriate. Have 2 meters or 1 meter if you really can't help it. Limit unnecessary traveling. Get regular environmental cleaning, disinfection, all that sort of stuff, right? That's what you need to have in place. Then it's difficult to say no.
And this is interesting because Crystal, thank you for putting your comment in here. So Crystal says that we are facing the challenges of returning to work to the office. So that's been the big employee challenge, and hence why also we are putting the hybrid working challenge as our topic today, because it is big. You know, Tosh and I are going to cover an overview in 30 minutes. And if you don't get what you need from this, Crystal, drop us a note, pick up the phone, we'll talk you through it. Because Tosh, you've just said it. The more as an employer we can show the reasonableness and the safety for individuals, the less they'll be able to say no. I think also you said here, considering hybrid working and lots of flexible home working requests and looking at home working agreements. So actually home working agreements is something I'd love to talk to you about, Tosh. I think ultimately, because employees have worked from home from what they can see as well enough, successfully, we know that productivity has actually increased in certain environments. A lot of employees are saying, but why? And I think employers have always had the responsibility of not just telling people what to do, but why we're doing it. And ultimately, this business, this organization has a mission and a motivation, and the organization and every senior member of that organization has to say, this is how we do it, and this is why we do it this way.
It's tricky, isn't it, Meeta? Because it's about trust, a lot of it as well. How many, I'm going to say not years, decades, have employers said you can't work from home? Yeah. Well, that turned out to be a load of BS, didn't it? Because now people can work from home. But it isn't, I know that the guideline says can. It isn't about can, as far as I'm concerned. There's a practical consideration to really promote the business. And I wanted to say something to Crystal, which is, you know, whilst you've got all these requests and you are going to be an employer that tries to accommodate all those things, the starting point is you. You have to look at your organization and what you need first, and then see how everything else fits. I was talking to somebody just about this today, Meeta. It's a bit like parenting, right? I kind of say, what do you know when you're in an airplane and the gas mask falls down, the oxygen mask drops down. You put it on yourself first. You're supposed to put it on the kid.
Yeah, you put it on yourself. You got to make sure.
But a lot of people might think you put it on the child first. That's actually how we conduct ourselves. Like right now, you're looking at the employee first. you have to make sure that it works for you first, and then you get the rest of it to work around you. So start with that. I hope that helps. I know that requires a more detailed conversation, but don't get too overwhelmed with, gosh, there's so many requests here. You don't need to do it like that. You start with this and then see where it fits.
Yeah, absolutely. So step one, let's get a safe working environment in place. Let's demonstrate that by giving everyone your return to work COVID safe policy. Number two, and what I would say, Tosh, is put out an ideal and a blanket policy of how you're planning to bring people back. Whether each manager has a conversation or you do an email and say, we are going to follow this up in a conversation, let everyone know that it's a fair and consistent approach to how we're going to work going forward, but we'll review it in a period of time. And then finally, and obviously there always has to be this, if you have any questions or concerns, come and talk to us. And then you've got to literally pick off those questions and concerns one by one. Always, as Tosh has said, going back to, does it fit the business requirements? Because again, there are some employers that are saying, well, we've got to be back because that's what we want. And
yeah, that's right. It's like a knee-jerk reaction.
Let's not be obstinate and lose people, because that will cost your business in another way. And that's the fine balance. And we know as people leaders, as business owners, it's that fine senior leadership balance of, we know what we want, but why do we want that? Is it actually going to achieve our business objectives? So actually, this goes back to, what are your senior leadership business objectives? Have they been clearly defined to you as senior management and people leaders? And then how do you translate that into telling your people about it so everyone can be on the same page?
And you know what, as an employer, we've mentioned this a couple of times in previous episodes, your obligation as an employer is to provide a safe system of work and a safe place of work. That's your legal obligation. The employee can refuse to come to work or can just leave work if they believe that they are in serious and imminent danger. That's really difficult for an employee to argue now if you have, I'm sorry to repeat myself, explained the measures in place that you're keeping them safe, carried out the individual risk assessments, and looked at adjustments to reduce the risk of transmission. If they say no, then it's a little bit like an employee just saying, I don't want to come to work. Well, guess what happens to them? They won't get paid, or they might even be subject to disciplinary action in those circumstances.
Yeah.
I know it's a balance. It's a balance.
It is. And actually, some statistics that there were 1,000 employees that went through a poll by one poll and asked to talk about how they felt about going back to work full time. Lack of personal space was a big issue. Not having enough sanitizer, not having enough communal cleaning, and travel. But these were the biggest issues that people spoke about. So address the challenges and tell people how you're going to overcome them, so that people have clear, defined understanding of how they're going to be kept safe. I know it feels like a lot, but you can do that once and then put that out there. And then people will say, but what about this? Update your policy to take those things into consideration. Because if one's thinking it and has asked it, others will be thinking it too. You just want to eliminate all barriers to getting people back into work happily and safely.
Meeta, I want to kind of put you on the spot because I'm not experiencing this. My advice is, as a lawyer, I understand it from the practical point of view of advising clients, but I made my office completely virtual last year. So, we ditched the office. And I will get an office again because I know the value of having people in one place. But you are still operating an office. You still have staff where they will be coming back or have been coming back before. Tell us what you're doing that perhaps people can benefit from that actual practical experience.
Okay, thank you. And that actually takes us on to our second topic, which is how to create this hybrid working space in a fair way.
That was not rehearsed, okay? Before anybody challenges me on that one.
And what to consider. And actually, you're absolutely right, Tosh. We, as an employer, would always conduct ourselves in a way that we would advise our clients, but we've also taken insight from hundreds of clients over the past few months of what are your challenges, what are your concerns, and actually a lot of it is around, well, what if we have a team of people that we say, hey, we can do 3 days in, 2 days out, go for it. All of a sudden, there are going to be some people that only come in on certain days, other people that want to be in on certain days, choosing different hours. All of a sudden, there might not be holiday cover. There might not be enough of the right people in on certain days because for collaboration, for culture, for community. And businesses are worried that giving too much room for employees to decide how they structure their days in and out may lead to differences in engagement and productivity and sort of alignment with the organization. So first and foremost, what I would say is, when you're thinking about getting people back to work, ask them, say you'll try and give them the days they want, but you can't promise. Make sure people understand what the expectation of their role is. So that's what something that we are doing and advising is, let's make sure everyone still understands what their job is, where they're going to be doing it and when, what responsibility they have to their role, what responsibility they have to their teammates. So do they have to be in on certain days? Do people have to cover holiday and sickness? What their responsibility then is to their division and their organization. And as a manager, they're going to have to do this with each member of their team. Do not take it for granted that by moving from, think about how much went into getting everyone comfortable working from home. You're going to have to do that again, getting people working in a hybrid space. And there are going to be some teething challenges. So have this tick list. Yes,
Meeta, you started off with asking your staff. I don't know if you meant that, because that's not an approach that I would necessarily take. I would start by saying what I want to do. Then I would ask their opinion on how that fits with what they want to do. So I don't give them tips.
Yeah, I think the blanket, we're aiming for a 3 in, 2 out, 4 in, 1 out is one. I also don't think any organization should be afraid of saying senior management can do 2 out of 3 days in, whereas junior people will have to do 4 out of 5 days in, because the needs of different individuals at different levels differ. So again, these will start to raise questions, but as long as you've got clarity on why, you can start moving forward in that way. But most importantly is, if you want people in your organization coming into the office for collaboration, for brainstorming, or you might be an organization that wants them in every day, help them understand why and help them understand the benefits, because that's the other thing. Rewards and benefits are going to evolve. And I think we would have to do a whole different webinar session on that. That as hybrid working comes in, as people's motivations for working changes, your rewards and benefits will have to evolve as well.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. Don't forget, people got used to a new way of being, new habits over the last 12 months. So now we're reconditioning them. It's not easy. No. But I also, I'm sorry, I'm sort of flogging it to death a bit now. But I also am very much appreciative of the fact that employees do not think the same way as management will think. They're not on the same level playing field. No, I agree, which is why you've got to almost spread it out to them what's happening, because they will be more self-motivated rather than looking at the business as a whole, in my experience.
And the way I look at that is, I call it point of view. And I'm a big believer that it's all about communication, and it's all about the clarity of communication. People will buy into transparency, they'll buy into honesty, and they'll build that trust and confidence where even if they were a bit uncomfortable with coming back to the office, they'll be like, okay, it's 3 months and then we're going to review it. I'm going to try it. And I think that's what this is going to be about, as well as saying, look, we're all in this together. Everyone, for different reasons, has some anxieties, whether it's just a change, whether it's the commute, whether it's sitting in the office for 1 day a week, or you're talking to someone who's been in Sri Lanka. I've got an employee who's actually said to me, Meeta, I get to pick my kids up on more days than I used to. I don't want to lose that. And I'm thinking, yeah, I get that. How can I make sure my business still has everything it needs, but my employee still gets to have that value? And I know in larger organizations, that's harder, but actually if you break every team down into a unit, you can find ways that you can maximize success. And remember, measure output, define what good looks like from the skills perspective, from the output of the roles perspective of how people behave. Go back to the job descriptions and have that definitive, because then there'll be no misunderstandings.
You can always work it out in that way. You're absolutely right. It's just, if nothing else, this whole experience has just taught us all how to think completely differently about handling one thing might be. In the old days of, I don't know, passing the paper to my colleague, even that is now a completely different thing. I'm not in the office, or transferring documents, collaborating with using Teams, different software, whatever it is. You're right. There's definitely ways that can work. It doesn't have to be your core hours anymore, does it? It could be working different hours, and a few hours in the morning, a couple of hours in the afternoon, or maybe a couple of hours in the evening. Just whatever works, as long as there's delivery, as long as those things are met, those outputs are met, whatever they may be in their respective jobs.
Yeah.
Does it matter, as long as they meet those things?
Exactly. And so when you asked how we do it, I said, these are our objectives as an organization. We want everyone to be winning in their role, but we also want everyone to feel safe, secure, and happy. So we're doing, Crystal just mentioned that Tosh, you reaffirmed the approach they're taking, which is working out what works for the charity first. Absolutely. Without your organization, nobody has a job. So absolutely, the first port of call has to be what the business, what the not-for-profit organisation needs. So you're looking at opening the office 3 days a week, Crystal, where only 10 staff are on a rota, and then that way they get used to it. So we're doing something similar in it for the first month. So we've sort of said mid-April to mid-May. People can come and go as they please, provided there's no more than a certain number. We've actually done a floor plan and said this is where people should sit, so that there's social distancing. We've done a little basket of what used to be sweets. It's now PPE equipment. It's sanitizer, it's masks, it's gloves, it's a little welcome basket of a new nature, post-COVID nature. But then, and I personally made sure that I got in the office, and I admittedly, I've been running this business for 20 years. I've been the business owner for 10 years, and I've been commuting for 5 days a week but for 20 years, and I hadn't been in the office for 4 months. And I had some anxiety, and I was like, where is this coming from?
Really?
Yeah. But it was just change, and also
yeah, sure.
we got used to, actually, one of the things that made me feel really confused was, what? I actually have another place that I can call my own. That's our office. And I loved it. Do you remember the days when we had an office with stuff there? And it was quite nice knowing that there was another place that could be mine.
Yeah,
so
leave home, leave that's home. That's work.
So there are things. So I think it's being patient with your people, but I bet once people start going in, having a bit of team banter, feeling into how safe and secure things are, being reassured by the list of checklists that Tosh, I know you and I are going to go through now, people will start to warm up. So let's not expect everyone to be on board on day one, but let's expect that over the next few weeks and months, people will become will warm up to it. So just because someone says they're not happy about it today doesn't mean they won't be happy about it in a month or two. So let's give each other some room to evolve as well.
Makes sense. Absolutely makes sense. So what's this checklist?
Okay, so what does COVID safe mean for your return to the office? That was going to be our final topic. And I know that everyone's got this COVID safe checklist. You can get it on the government guideline. We're going to be sending it out to you today. But what I think we wanted to say was that, the vaccine is out, and as for some people, they think it's a license to go a little crazy. But it doesn't replace the need to have these protective measures at work. And I think that's really important, not only to reassure your staff, but actually remind your staff. And also, if your staff are going out, they're going to bars now, they're sitting outside, they're putting themselves out there, they're getting on trains to go to Westfield. I did that last week. It was crazy. They should be open to coming into the office as well. So it's getting a feel for how comfortable people are, but also reminding everyone of their responsibility.
It's another protective measure. That's all it really is. That doesn't stop you doing all the other things that should be in the workplace. So definitely don't get confused with that. Everybody knows, or if they've forgotten, what COVID secure means. We're giving the guidance out with this recording anyway. And as I said, there's 14 different guidelines for 14 different types of industries. So they talk about all the different things you can have. So if you haven't got those things in place already, then have a look. And if you have got them in already, have a look. Just make sure you've ticked off the different things and you've got what you need to have in place to protect your staff, and actually, probably more importantly, make them feel like they're being protected.
And I'm a big advocate of video. So if you can go in, you can take a video, you can show your team, hey guys, look what we're doing. This is where we are. This is how we're doing it. Send it out. This is the world of instant engagement, instant communication. Don't underestimate. We hired somebody through the pandemic. We onboarded her through the pandemic. The first time she stepped foot in the office was on Tuesday, and that was my first day back in 4 months. And I said, Emma, how does it feel? This is the first time you're here. What's your thoughts? How does it feel? And she said, Meeta, it's great to see everyone, but I felt like I knew everyone already. And I said, what about the office? And she said, well, actually, Jan did a little video tour of the office, so I feel like I've already been here. So don't underestimate the power of video, and talking to your people to reassure them. So I've got these guidelines here, Tosh. There's a lot of them, but I'm just going to go over them quickly because I think it's important for everyone to start thinking about what to do. So we've already spoke about recording the risk assessment, and there are lots of templates available on site for this. So consider your employees when they're doing this, and share the results with your employees and your teams once you've done the risk assessment. So again, don't just do it and say, hey, it's done. Let them know what the finding was. Before I carry on, we've got a comment, and I want to make sure that we get the feedback and give feedback from our chat box. So Katia, you said you've got questions coming from staff asking if they will know who has been vaccinated and who wasn't, and how would you go around this question? Well, do you know what? I think the vaccine is a big topic. So shall we cover this? Thanks for bringing that up.
Absolutely.
How do we deal with that?
So you know what, the idea comes back to the principle of ensuring a safe system and safe place of work. So why wouldn't there be a disclosure to confirm people have had the vaccine or not? And if they haven't got the vaccine, why are we not worried about those people in the workplace? Because presumably we've got enough measures in place that doesn't matter, because it's just an additional level, right?
Yeah.
So if people are asking that, why isn't that an open policy? This isn't some sort of, private and confidential medical condition that you don't want to disclose or something like that. This is merely saying, yep, I've had the vaccine, tick, there's another tick box, that's it. So if that's something that allows people to feel secure, what's the problem? There's no legal issue, you can't disclose that.
Okay, so that's very interesting. So first of all, we can make it a requirement that people have a vaccine done. Is that right, Tosh? Cannabis.
Well, you can't force somebody to take a vaccine, just like you can't force somebody to come to work. There's consequences if they don't take the vaccine, but which is a different thing. But if they take, the question here is they want to know who's taking the vaccine or not.
Yeah.
So the only reason they should know whether somebody's taken the vaccine is if they're in the workplace, I presume. If it's remote, it's nobody's business.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming one of the measures that we're having, remember, we're explaining the measures that we are putting in place to keep you safe. That was the first thing we said that employees need to do. Well, why isn't that something that's confirmed? The staff that have been vaccinated are coming in.
So we can have one of our risk assessments is that everyone who comes into the office will have to declare whether they've had the vaccine or not. My follow-on question to that is, and I'm putting you on the spot now, you're absolutely right. A company can have the policy that employees have to be vaccinated, but employees can choose not to have a vaccine if they don't want to for whatever reason. Please be aware, as an employer, there could be discriminatory situations that arise.
Religion, or because of they're pregnant. You're right, there could be valid reasons, which always comes back to the first question is why not?
Yeah.
If they're not doing it, why are they saying no? We need to determine whether that's reasonable or not.
So an employer, having you as an employment lawyer here and being able to ask you questions is so valuable. So as an organization, a company could say, our policy is that every employee is vaccinated unless they have a medical or religious reason not to. How could an employer put that together?
I wouldn't put it as hard as that. I would do this. I'd have two levels of a policy, Meeta. Policy number one is we expect everybody to have the vaccines come into workplace, part of a measure in place to keep everybody safe. Unless there are perfectly individual valid reasons for that not to be the case, they're obligated to inform us. That's number one. Number two is we will also have people in the workplace who have not been vaccinated. This is not a concern because we've got these things in place in any event, because the vaccine is only an additional layer. If people are working 2-3 meters apart, there's no contact with each other, you actually don't even need to necessarily wear a mask. I'm not advocating that, but you don't. The idea is the distancing, actually. So it depends what kind of workplace you are. The more, if we're getting closer to 1 meter apart, well, that becomes more of an issue. If there's other things in place, then it doesn't really matter. So have the two layers. Yes, we want you to do this. If you haven't done it, let us know why.
Yeah.
Absolutely, perfectly reasonable. Then they can come in or not come in. And if they still come in and we've got the things in place, that's fine. If they don't come in, well, that's as an employer where you need to decide, well, hang on a minute, are we accepting that as reasonable or not?
Yeah. So, Katia, hopefully you've got an answer to your question, which is there's no reason why you can't disclose that everyone has or hasn't got a vaccine. What if a company doesn't want to disclose that? Then what would be the approach, Tosh?
If they don't want to, then they can say we don't want to disclose it. The issue is what's the impact of that? Well, it creates concern. It creates worry. Yeah, the idea of the question being asked isn't to be nosy. Yeah. The idea is is it safe?
Yeah.
So if they're not being vaccinated, what have you got there in place to keep it a safe place of work? If they have got it in place, what have you still got in place? Remember, that's not the be all and end all. What are all the things you've got in place to keep everyone safe? It doesn't change.
Yeah, and then, Tosh, it means that if someone then says, well, I'm not coming in because Joe Blogs or Marie Blogs over there isn't vaccinated, as an employer, you can say, well, you don't have that concern because we have all of these other measures in place.
Correct. And then what are you going to do?
Well, if the employee still says no, then it's got to go down the stick route, hasn't it, Tosh?
Well, it's either going to be, that's fine, you can refuse to come in and we will not pay you, because you only get paid if you make yourself ready, willing and able to work.
Yeah.
Or it might be disciplinary action. But before you start jumping down those routes, make sure you get some, talk to me, have a chat with me, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I think, every employer, Katia, you said that that's helped you. You like the different layers, that's brilliant.
Good, great.
And also who you are as an employer and what kind of place you want to be in. I think it really does come back to that. And I think in any organization, usually there's a mandate from above of, right, this is our policy, everyone in, everyone remote, or a hybrid. Hybrid can be 65% in, out, whatever. After that, it's up to you as people leaders to decide, is it blanket, is it individual, but within confines. For example, Tosh, we were talking about core hours. It could be that an employer has hybrid working, but within that, they say everyone has to be on between certain hours. Or it could be that we have 100% in, but actually you can be in between 8 and 4 or 11 and 8. It could be that, for different organizations, especially in hospitality and retail, they will have different scenarios and infrastructure challenges, logistics, that mean what's right for them won't be right for somebody else, and vice versa. So really think about your world and the outcomes you're trying to achieve, and then create the policies based on that, I would say.
Well, what you're saying in a nicer way than I am is use your loaf. Common sense. It really is that we're overcomplicating with so many concerns about different things. But a lot of this, if you really think about it, it's just common sense about what can work, what seems reasonable, that word again. Lawyers will always use that word, just so you know, because if it ever ends up in court, you have to justify why did you do what you did? Why did you say what you said? And if you can justify it, it's reasonable. So let's get it right now from this point onwards. At the beginning, begin with the end in mind. Then you'll be able to overcome those challenges, whatever they might be, right?
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, thank you. I think we are coming up very closely to 4 minutes. So our time is almost up. I'm quickly going to go back to the poll and end it so everyone can see the results. But wow, it is all about either motivation and engagement or flexible working requests. So Tosh, I think that will then dictate what our next couple of weeks of webinars are going to be about. Our webinars are every Thursday at 11 a.m. But as Tosh said at the start, Tosh and I are available to our webinar community through LinkedIn, on the phone, or via email or even WhatsApp. We want to be available to you doing this webinar. And it is great to be back, isn't it, Tosh? It is great to be able to take everything we glean from the conversations we have and all the expertise that we can bring together and then share it with our community to help you all to.
We're in the service industry. This is where we get our buzz from, is actually putting value out there and helping people. That's what we do. So what Meeta just said just now about connecting with us on LinkedIn, we've said this before, but if you haven't heard it before, please find us on LinkedIn. We've both got fairly unusual names. So you should be able to find us because we put loads and loads of free stuff out there that is really practical, both from our respective individual companies as well as us doing this together for you. So please connect with us and I don't know what the phrase is, use us. If you need us, you've got experts on hand who are ready, willing, able to help, all right?
Very much so. And Katia, thank you for your comment about my post. I put my mask on and I went in and it did feel good. Obviously safety first, but also let's start finding a way of getting back to some form of normality. It's in our hands, safe, successful and happy. That's what we want to be. Wonderful.
Thanks very much.
Well, thank you everyone. Thanks, Tosh, and we'll see you 11 o'clock next week.
See you next week, everyone. Bye. Bye.